Imagine thinking your enemy is weak, till the moment you see them with your own eyes, and everything you were taught completely collapses. The year is 1945. The war is over. And for a group of Japanese women conscripted into auxiliary units, a new journey was just beginning. They were now prisoners of war, being transported to America. But this wasn't just a relocation. It was a full-on reality check, a head-on collision with truths their leaders never wanted them to see. On August 20th, 1945, nearly 300 Japanese female POWs were shipped from Guam to the American mainland. These weren't frontline soldiers. They were nurses, radio operators, students, women who had served their country believing Japan was winning, believing victory was inevitable. Their leaders had fed them a very specific story. America, they were told, was weak, lazy, and soft. It was a collapsing nation filled with starving civilians and broken cities. Yeah, that narrative didn't last very long. Even before they landed, the truth started to punch through. On the transport ship, the American guards weren't the frail, cartoonish figures propaganda had drawn. These guys were tall, broad, and built like linebackers, walking with that casual American confidence. They had clean uniforms, polished boots, and strong posture. One young nurse remembered being taught that American men were spoiled and soft from capitalist luxury. Yet the guard offering her a cup of water had an arm that felt as hard as steel. She whispered to a friend, "Were we lied to? All this time?" The voyage itself only deepened the shock. These women were used to starvation-level rations. But now they were eating meals overflowing with food. Canned fruit, white bread, real coffee, butter, and the portions of meat were so large they looked completely unreal. Some ate slowly, suspicious of a trick. Others cried silently, completely overwhelmed by the abundance. They had been told that America was starving. Instead, they watched as perfectly good food was thrown away, food their families back home would have fought for. By the time the ship docked in San Francisco, the propaganda was already cracking. The city was a steel and glass giant. Skyscrapers pierced the morning fog. Massive bridges were packed with endless streams of trucks and cars. It looked more like the future than the ruined nation they were told America was. Their train ride inland was another reality bomb. They saw rolling wheat fields, endless orchards, and herds of cattle that stretched beyond the horizon. It became clear that an orchard worker in Wisconsin could eat better than a high-ranking officer in Tokyo. A young medical student wrote in her journal, "If this is a dying nation, then the world has flipped completely upside down." Their destination was Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. They arrived to find clean barracks, kitchens that smelled of fresh bread, and hot water, something many of them hadn't felt in years. When one woman nervously asked how long she could stay under the hot shower, the American matron just blinked and said, "Sweetheart, stay as long as you need." That one simple sentence shattered more lies than any official lecture could have. The medical exams were another shock. The American women, even the civilians, were taller, heavier, and stronger. Their teeth, their bones, their general health, all of it, was better across the board. A Red Cross nurse who worked there wrote, "They stare at the medical charts like we're tricking them. Some of them cry when we tell them they're malnourished. They simply cannot believe it." Every little detail cut deeper. The guards' strong frames, the endless supply of soap and fabric, the discarded cigarette ends, the casually repaired trucks, the food that never, ever seemed to run out. Everything contradicted everything they had ever believed. Some of them still tried to rationalize it. They'd whisper, "Maybe these guards are just hand-picked giants, or maybe all this food is staged just to fool us." But deep down, the truth was gnawing at them. And then came the final breaking point. During a lecture on American wartime production, an officer explained, through an interpreter, that the U.S. had built over 96,000 aircraft in 1944 alone. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Japan's best year had only produced 28,000. When they learned how many planes America built in a single year, jaws hit the floor. This wasn't just a gap, it was a canyon. One of the medical students dropped her pencil. "Then why?" she asked. "Why did they send us to fight?" The truth wasn't just painful, it was a betrayal. That evening, A nurse named Sachiko broke down, shouting, They knew the truth and they sent us anyway. Nobody comforted her. Nobody argued, because every single woman in that room felt the exact same stab of realization. They weren't just prisoners of war, they were witnesses to the collapse of a completely fabricated world. Months passed. Some of the women learned English. Some wrote endlessly in their journals about what they'd seen. Some began to question everything from loyalty and morality to the very meaning of truth. One woman wrote, We were like children in a house of mirrors. Here in the land of our enemy, I see my true reflection for the very first time. When news from home finally arrived. Especially the news about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it shattered the last of their illusions. The devastation proved that the propaganda wasn't just wrong, it was deadly. One woman stood by the window of the barracks, watching the sunset stain the melting snow a blood red. They took everything from us, she said softly. Our brothers, our homes, our pride. But here, I see children laughing. Women are respected, there's food everywhere. If this is what defeat looks like, what would victory have ever meant? When these women finally returned to Japan, they were no longer the same people. They had come to America as enemies. They had lived as captives. But they left as something entirely different. They were witnesses to the truth. They were living proof that an entire war had been built on illusions. And they were a reminder that sometimes the harshest defeat is what opens your eyes the clearest. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as powerful as I did, make sure to like and subscribe for more chapters from history you might not know. See you next time.